Tariff means that you open your door. Let everything come in. So in other words, they come in. Now what happened to your local industry? Can you compete? But the ordinary man on the street does not care. He's looking for the cheapest thing to buy. But when the country now, you look at your debt, then you see the impact of what it's all. I mean, the kind of destructive. So of course, they are still debating it, but unfortunately, it's already happened. So, like I said, it's the globalization pill that are getting African countries to really, squad. Although 10 out of 7 have signed, but more will sign. There's no doubt. In other words, you will reduce your tariff to allow import. And that, what's happening? The first casualty, Dunlop. Dunlop, 8 billion pounds runs away was the story. And that's the Dunlop plant that used to be vibrant. You can see the evidence that it has closed shop with all the thousands of people employed. You then ask yourself, a country that recognizes unemployment as a problem, and you are now in your industrial sector a key actor to close shop. I mean, what sort of policy somersault you like? But again, the pressure that they are reacting to is nothing but the pressure that I mentioned. This question of opening your borders with no tariff. I said in here that dollar went down after producing tariff in Nigeria for 45 years and closing the city billion plan 4 years after dollar invested 6.5 billion in new technology to produce new tires, 300,000 heavy-duty tires and so on. Now what has happened? They are now importing tires from Japan and South Africa. Michelin, I think, first closed, followed by Dunlop. Nigeria is said to have lost about 65 billion annually due to the downturn in fortune of the tire industry. The collapse of Dunlop, what caused it? Dunlop used to invest close to $800,000 annually on electricity generation. And then half of that amount as electricity to PHA, so you can say it's $1.2 million. Multiply that by 150, you are talking of billion spent on power supply alone. So it had high cost of production due to unreliable electricity, unstable government policy. And the unstable government policy has to do that when government puts the tariff at 40% for imported tire, Dunlop was able to compete. They were in business. Then the pressure was put on Nigerian government to lower the tariff, and government lowered the tariff to 10%. And of course, Dunlop couldn't compete. And that was it. That's what we do like government policy somersault. That government will encourage people to go into certain areas, invest, then all of a sudden, they turn back. So it's very, very important. In terms of control of the sources, I'm happy that this is the University of Agriculture. You will appreciate it more. What is coming now? That's what is now called the land grabs in Africa. And what do you mean by land grabs in Africa? It is because China, India, and South Korea, along with Saudi Arabia, they were shaken in 2007-2008 by food crisis in their countries. And unfortunately, they could not respond adequately because they have not got enough sufficient land or water to ensure that they can feed the population in the coming years. In other words, those countries which do not have sufficient land, they have now realized that there is no way with the available land that even no matter the progress in technology and research, that they can sustain the economy. So, what have they done? They now look beyond their borders. Some is now, what they are is, I said in there, they are now looking towards Africa to now buy land. And by 2010, this will be stored for 140 million acres with 75% of Sahara Africa according to the World Bank report. And out of this work, the reason is not far-fetched. Africa is big. As I'm showing in that, in that projection, Africa is 11.7 million square miles in area. And it contains the whole of USA, the whole of China, the whole of Europe, Argentina, India, New Zealand. And with a high percentage not yet public contribution. So in other words, there's now all roads lead to Africa to get land. And how is that playing out? With the 99-year lease for 2,500 acres, a Saudi Arabian investor brought in Spanish engineers and Dutch water technology and hired 1,000 people to pick and pack 50 tons of food a day in Ethiopia. The food supply is driven 200 miles to Addis Ababa and flow 1,000 miles to the shops and restaurants of Dubai, Jeddah, and elsewhere in the Middle East. So those of you travel, when you are in Dubai, the food you are eating is one grown in Ethiopia. And yet Ethiopia had but they came up with offers that the government would not refuse. And they gave them choice now. And what they are using those, what they are planting on those land, the crops, are not for local consumption. They are treated for export. Now, some government will cast this and say this is FDI, foreign direct investment. And they will be congratulating themselves as well back to say, oh, that country has FDI. Is this an FDI that benefits the country? But they say, oh yes, we need it, but the land has been taken for 99 years. So, these are the realities, coming in terms of controlling resources. So I now conclude to say that basically, some of the consequences of economic globalization, which will be driving our research and concern in the university, is that we are now having a regulated global economy. We cannot control it unless we have strong government. Then, concentration of power and wealth in the hands of fewer companies and people. Most companies abroad now, we are seeing them creating synergy, they are becoming bigger and bigger. The one of the slides in there, which I showed, China has a sovereign wealth fund. The sovereign wealth fund of China, which they have invested in their corporation, which goes all over the world to invest, is $332 billion. Now, you tell me, a company that, an investment company that has $332 billion, and what the interest rate? Almost zero. Now coming to your country. They are ready to invest. And how much do you, because Nigeria have the sovereign wealth fund? How much do we have? 1 billion. And we are still fighting ourselves. We are still fighting ourselves. People are still fighting that they need the money now. What do we want to put $1 billion for? They think it's a lot of money. China has $332 billion sovereign wealth fund, which they use now to go out and want to invest. So you can see what we're saying. So the hands and then loss of jobs, of course. We continue to lose jobs. And then green drain, which has started. And still, well, of course, it has reduced a bit because the world over there too is also not so rosy. Of course, our prayer is that may the world not be rosy over there so that our place can come back. Okay? So, and of course, we hope they will come back. They're not coming back yet. This is slide for plane drain. You can see the departure launch. The departure line is still on and on, people trying to get on the flight. And where's the arrival? The arrival, I told that I think Erewa, Lady Erewa is the one in charge of diaspora. So that actually, it's only that I don't want to change somebody. This was something from Stanley. I didn't want to change his slide. I will have put Erewa Abigail. Receiving the people who have come from diaspora. This is still real. It's still real and it's a challenge. So, what is the challenge for me and you, especially the university? Is that we must reclaim and build our local economies by working to create and sustain locally owned enterprises that sustainable harvest and process local resources to produce jobs and goods and services that we need to live. That is our challenge. How do we continue? How can we crystallize new businesses How can we equip those students and so on, I mean, before they leave the system, to start thinking of what they can do out there? How can we also help companies that are already in production to sustain competition? And these are the challenges that we are facing. And it's from there that we expect our research. So I said that the imperative is that we must first of all understand globalization. Our government, we have to understand globalization for what it is. And they must steer the forces that drive global competition. You have to understand it. Before the American election, you know, one of the major issues driving that election was the question of unemployment. And I was just listening to a program where the platform on which they were going to solve the unemployment problem and create jobs was that they said in there that first and foremost, American companies must no longer be allowed to export jobs. You know, most American companies will go to East Asia and so on because of what they call comparative advantage of cheap labor, but technically efficient. All these Dell manufacturers, computer manufacturers, they are all out. They were then bringing the assembled product back to US. Now, America is saying, no, you can no longer export jobs. But what are they doing? Because they know that the jobs, I mean, the cost of operation is high. That's where they are now bringing in new funds to now support, you know, industry so that they can be competitive, so that the jobs can be retained in US. But when they are advising us, the World Bank of this world, that I've always said at every opportunity, caused the greatest problem for higher education in Africa. Because it was World Bank in the 90s that advised our country, our ministers of education, that higher education is not cost effective, that they should concentrate on the primary, secondary. And most of our countries took that. And that was the decline of funding of higher education. Then no sooner the same World Bank came back and said, oh, you need to build research and technology capacity. Higher education also now important. But the damage had already been done. It was the single move that led to the brain drain. I mean, there were times, thank God now that businesses now don't have to worry about paying salaries. At least our budget will pay the salaries of staff. Once upon a time, there were Vice-Chancellors that were having to borrow money to pay salary. As bad as that. So the brain drain, you know, started from, and of course we have not recovered. You know, so the point I'm making is that we cannot neglect the policy, terrain. The policy by government is the one that is supposed to encourage some of the activities we are talking about that we cannot, you know, ignore. Then I said, of course, I've already said it's knowledge, information, and innovation. It's what people are using, you know, to really, you know, advance. And in there, so basically, as I've already said, the challenge is how can we build science, engineering, technology, innovation driven, you know, industrial sector. That is the challenge. And in doing this is the triple partnership. We must constantly engage ourselves that we need to cooperate with government, academia, and industry. We must link with industry. Thank God, I think FUNAAB has a very good record of linking with industry. It has to be strengthened. That is the direction to go. There's no more ivory tower. We cannot stay now in the tower and say that we don't care what is happening out there. No, we have to go right out there. And then not only to industry, to government, to influence some of these policies. Because without supporting policy domain, some of the activities we'll be talking about will never be, come to be. For a long time, do we have a research fund in Nigeria? No. Until now, but I tell you what's happening in the state of that. So we must constantly keep at the back of our mind that it is triple areas that it calls for. The cooperation between government, academia, and industry. And in here, I was just giving an idea of where are we in terms of innovation. Industrial innovation, that is, industrial competitiveness. Where are we? Now, a study of 31 countries have been done recently. They find that 23 are just in what we call the first set, the first round of competitiveness. That is what we call factor-driven economy. Why is Nigeria of interest to people? Mainly because of the resources. In other words, the basis of competition is because of availability of resources. And as we are telling government, yes, we have oil now. People are projecting the next 50 years and so on. Fine. But there was a report which I will share with you. America has now declared that between now and in 25 years' time, they will not import a liter of oil from anywhere. The project is called Winning the Oil End Game. You need to read that report. And they are funding universities now on renewable energy, alternative energy. And they are challenging the motor manufacturing companies to come up with vehicles that will be completely disengaged from oil. And they are already making progress. So what that means, and the US is our major customer. It that means that what they've been buying from us will be going down. So those who are still fighting themselves over oil wells, let them continue. When they don't even ask for the oil, maybe you discover that. Because what America said is this, that the world economy was built on coal, supplying energy at a time. When oil came, coal was returned to the ground. Minus China. Most countries now do not. Nigeria, are we mining our coal? No. Even though we have reserve, but it is no longer our source, it's not in our energy mix. And that was because oil, what oil did to coal. So they are now saying that what renewable energy will do to oil is to make sure that that oil remains in the ground. Now, if a contract that you are your major supplier, and this oil is supposed to drive our economy, and we are still wasting our time, projecting 50 years, 100 years, and other countries are already looking for alternative. Because in that report, they said they have experienced 2 oil shocks. Oil crisis of 73, I think 90 something, that they will not allow the 3rd oil shock to come. So, you have to be able to monitor what is going on, and we also must be responding. So in here, what they have said basically, that the way to respond, at the end of research and development, good marketing, craftsmanship and specific skills. That is another place where Nigeria is a serious struggle. Because our what we can call technical schools are collapsed. When people now need serious technicians, they are not looking in the direction of Nigeria. They are not looking in the direction of our neighbors. You want good plumbers, you want good people who can do this. Most of them go to any serious construction site and do a survey of the nationalities of the technicians, craftsmen. We will be sure that we will answer to this one. But the reason is not factors. Our technical something has collapsed. And we as researchers, there is no way even our research can lead the market. Without bringing this set of people to play their part. And if they are not there, then it will help us. So that one also is very, very important. Import substitution is what we are, of course, the Minister of Agri, Dr. Additional is doing, we talk of cassava bread. And of course, all of us were happy when we saw Mr. President eating the cassava bread. Now, I said from the IIT lab, then somebody corrected me, said it was from Zero Lab. I think they are fighting themselves now. Who really gave us cassava bread? Is it Zero or is it IIT? Okay, I don't know. But really, anybody with that, when there was an attempt to go to the National Assembly to have a law banning import that is now the question we ask ourselves, we are now a research community. Is cassava bread ready? Is cassava bread ready to be on the table of every Nigerian? Of course, we still have a long way to go. You still have to look at it as a value chain. Is it every species of thank God, amazed people in agree. Is it every species of cassava that you can use for cassava bread? Now, if there are special species, who are the people now helping the millions of farmers that we have to grow those special species for them? Who are the people looking at the consumer acceptance? Or you think that you can legislate somebody's food for, what we take? What we like? No way. It's like the mistake made by our late sage, Chief of Bamiro, when he was campaigning and he went to Aba and he was telling Aba people that panda or stockfish, that it doesn't have food value. And they said, which food value is this man talking about? First of all, from point of view of business, Aba was the center of Oporoko, they call it, or something like that. You come and tell them that this thing has no food value. What is it talking? So the same thing, you bring bread, cassava bread, and it does not say, which means that we still have a lot of problem for consumer acceptance. We still have a long way to go. And this is the type of challenge, but thank God that sanity is prevailing. And I quoted in here, African Development Bank, which approved almost $63 million for the project they call Agri-Research for Development of Strategic Crops in the area of staple food, maize, rice, and I think IT is involved, and a number of now that is the type of challenge that one will be expecting from Agri, to challenge our universities, to look at the value chain for really achieving, that's cassava bread. But without that, I don't think it to be achieved. So I said, what is my take on all this? I said that this type of initiative, one can expect in Nigeria at the national and state level. Our university have to show commitment to research-driven incremental innovation to support the element of the value chain in agriculture and other sectors to achieve, sustainable, development. Then I said, what is innovation? Because we keep hearing innovation. To do, some people in the academia, it may mean that you go from the research in the lab and then on to the market. Yes, fine, that's innovation, but that's not the only thing that we mean by innovation. You can go do the reverse. That is, go to the industrial sector, identify the problems they are having, and bring to your university to now address and return. In other words, it's not coming from your lab as such. And that's why we say that the process by which farm master and implement the design and production of goods and services that are new to them, irrespective of whether or not they are new to their computer, domestic or foreign. In other words, innovation is not the same thing as invention. Invention, you try to say, you lay claim that it has never been done in the world. But innovation, no, there is no such claim. But the claim is that it is making a difference to that particular enterprise. Maybe it's improving his, a bottom line, as economists will say. So we have to really put that at the back of our mind. And I gave an example in here of what I mean by, innovation. Here, Nigerian chicken market was when we did this study, 2002. There was supply-demand gap of 28 tons per week. 5 billion per annum market, increasing supply-demand gap due to rapid growth of the fast food chains. That was when all these Fula Yeni came with the tantalizer. Mr. Big dominated. Then tantalizer came, and a number of them. As they were opening more of these food chains, if you study a particular food chain, the business in there is poultry-oriented. It's almost 60% poultry. So the Nigerian poultry sector could not sustain the growth in compete, non-competitive prices. And that was because what happened was that the imported chicken was coming at 140 naira per kg, whereas the production cost of our poultry farmers was around 190 naira per kg. Surely they could not compete. The one thing about food chain, which I got to know when I did this study, is that it is not good to use imported chicken. The Nigerians don't like the taste. It was then I learned that there is a relationship between taste and the feed mechanism. The feed regime. I think you should know that the feed regime you give to the chicken dictates the taste. So you cannot just bring chicken, and no food chain. We want a system whereby you test chicken in one outlet is different from the other outlet. So they know that they have to just, encourage. So increase in capacity, lower production cost. So what happened? One brilliant young guy who graduated from Ife, Ibadan, who had a poultry farm. As at that time, what most of the poultry farmers were trying to tell government was that, government should ban importation to protect the local market. But he took a different view. He asked himself the fundamental question. If chicken could be arriving in the Nigerian port at 140 naira per kg, and its whole production cost was 190 naira per kg. It means that where the chicken has been imported, production will probably be 100 naira, if not less, per kg, meaning probably half of his own production cost. So he then asked his guy, what were my competitors doing there that I have not been doing here? That was what he now went on the internet. He searched the web to know about the operations of those companies from where they were bringing the chicken. And he visited them to see what technology have they been using for production. And what he found was this, what they call the tunnel ventilation system. Well, maybe in this university, those in poultry, this is not very strange. Tunnel ventilation system, what it means is that if you can keep the temperature and the humidity in the pen at a comfortable level, your chicken will do very well. They will grow faster, they will eat less of your feeds, and of course, you will see the result. On that. This is the result. The traditional technology where the pens are just open to the atmosphere, and your chickens are subjected to fluctuating temperatures and humidity. Compared to, let's say, this place, as we are in here, converted to a pen, and the chickens are here. That is what tunnel ventilation is. What's the difference? Duration of rearing to slaughter from our traditional method was 56 days. The new technology, 38 days. Less number. And then, total number of cycles you can do in a year, 5, traditional 7. Average weight per bird, almost the same, 2 kg. But look at the feed requirement. Your own chicken traditional method will consume 2.52 kg, whereas the other one will consume 1.88, less than 2. And then you can put more in a pen because it's so comfortable. It's like we're supposing the ACs here have been switched off. I'm sure most of us will feel uncomfortable. It's the same thing with animals. So at the bottom line, you see the bottom line. Cost per kg of flesh 191, he brought it down to 142. And that was what he brought to Ibadan to now start the competition. So, is that innovation or not? But is the technology new? No, but it's new to him. So that's what we mean by innovation. That's what we mean by innovation. And then in there, let's see the story more. I said the lesson we must learn from that. Innovation can take place outside research and development. Don't let us have the feeling that it's only in the university that innovation can take place. Yeah, of course, innovation takes place in the university, but it can also take place in the, in the industrial sector without being the university. Innovation is innovation is not necessarily big science, as it can utilize the technological knowledge already in the public domain. And public domain can be in the university. In other words, there can be certain technology we have developed that are of use to some of our industrial actors, but they are not aware. It's our responsibility to go out there to make sure that we disseminate. Then it can either be a sustainable instrument or instrument if it is backed up by R&D. Now, I make this point as part of paradigm shift. This company I just described that brought in the new technology is in Ibadan. Ibadan is the center of poultry in the country. Now, it started, that process. Until a student from University of Ibadan, we have a University of Ibadan, Department of Animal Science. We have professors of poultry. Until students from Animal Science in Ibadan went on industrial attachment in this company. That was when they got to know about that technology. When they came back to UI to give their seminar with me and you sitting down, it was then the professors got to know about the new technology. Now, all the notes we have been given to the students, all the research publications, we have been asking them to go and reference based on existing technology. Now the question now is, what is important? What is the reaction? What is our reaction to that? We either can still go back into our shell and regard it as one of those, or we can be humble and say we want to know more and visit that farm. Thank God that they took the humble path to go in there just about 8 kilometers away. And today, there is now strong there, and they can now take it from there. They can help him to take it beyond that level. That is what we are talking about. The knowledge economy of today means that, first of all, I always tell people in the UI, although they don't like hearing it, I said maybe 15, 20 years ago, we can say we are lecturers. Like I'm lecturing now, everybody is looking in my direction. I'm the source of knowledge, give me knowledge. And you are all seated like this. I said, no, classroom of knowledge economy now is like this. Because students will know more than you.